Joining us now, a member of the House Oversight, Homeland Security, and Intelligence Committees, Republican Congressman Will Hurd of Texas. And the first question goes to Jonathan Lemire.
Jonathan, don't screw this up.
Okay.
I've done my best.
Okay.
Congressman, good morning. You went on a rather remarkable tweet storm in the last 24 hours describing the conditions at the border, in particular the tent facility down in your state in Texas, where children are still being detained from this family separation policy we have seen imposed by the White House. Tell us a little bit about what you saw, what needs to change, and what prompted this? Why are you so angry, sir?
Well, first and foremost, this was a facility that was started off at around 500 beds, grew to almost 4,000. Currently, there's 2,800 kids in this Tornillo tent facility. And the problem that I have with this is that this facility is supposed to close by the end of this month, on December 31. The contractor wants to leave, but HHS doesn't have a plan to address the 2,800 kids that are in this facility. 1,300 of those kids have an identified sponsor. The sponsor has done the fingerprinting, provided all the paperwork they need. These children should be able to be released to the sponsor. There's about 1,100 kids who have an ID'd sponsor, but they're waiting to be told where they're supposed to show up to do fingerprints and provide their information. These kids, their wait time in a facility like this has doubled over the last couple of months, and which is unacceptable, because we also know that the longer a child is in a facility like this, it increases the chance of long-term mental health issues.
How old, sir, are these children? What sort of conditions are you seeing? And whose fault is this? What can Congress do to force the White House to act?
Well, this is a manifestation of a bad policy, right? One of the things that we were seeing is this administration was trying to have background checks on every single person that could potentially have lived in a home. This was increasing the length of time to do background checks. I think some of that earlier was intentionally. Now, I will say a positive step happened yesterday. The new head of HHS's ORR, that's the Office of Refugee Resettlement, which is responsible for these children, put out a new directive that said only the senior sponsor has to go through this fingerprinting and background check. We want to make sure that when we are releasing these kids, that we're releasing them into a safe environment, so having some due diligence is important. That should reduce the amount of time that's required to review these children's file or the sponsor's file, and make sure that we have these kids in the homes of a family member or ultimately a sponsor. But most importantly, we need to close down this temporary facility out in Tornillo.
Congressman, it's Willie Geist. The president's tweeting again that the wall will happen. There's been some doubts, some people saying he's given up his stance on the wall. You've said about the wall that it's the most expensive and least effective way to do border security. You actually know what you're talking about. You represent the state of Texas. You're at the border, as you've just described. What is a better way than a wall? And do you believe the president at some point will get this wall?
So, and Willie, I appreciate that. You're absolutely right. I have more border than any other member of Congress, 820 miles. I spent almost a decade as an undercover officer in the CIA, chasing bad guys all over the world. A better use of that money would be on technology, what I like to call the smart wall. The technology exists. We can determine the difference between a bunny rabbit and a person. We can track that person with a drone or a camera, and we can beam all that information we're getting to the men and women in Border Patrol. This is a fraction of the cost of a 30-foot high concrete structure that takes 4 hours to penetrate. In certain parts of the border, Border Patrol's response time is measured in hours to days. If your response time is measured in hours today, a wall is not a physical barrier. So this is the solutions we should be focused on. Also, there's 2,000 positions in Border Patrol that are unfilled. We need to be making sure that we're focusing on reducing that. So this is where our money should be focused on. And also, if you want to deal with illegal immigration, you got to address the root causes, and that is violence and lack of economic opportunities in the Northern Triangle. That's Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. So we should be talking about how do we strengthen the State Department and USAID. I was down in those countries recently reviewing these programs, and we're seeing how we're helping these governments reduce violence. And when you reduce violence, you reduce the amount of illegal immigration that's coming this way.
Congressman, you're on the Homeland Security Committee. If you demanded or asked today for a list listing of all the children, the 2,800 children you're talking about in this camp, their names, their country of origin, their ages, and their parental link. How long would it take for HHS to get it to you?
A great question. I couldn't, speculate on that. I'd probably have a better chance of getting it from the folks on the ground down in Tornillo. But this is, and I've just recently had conversation with senior leaders in HHS. They're committed to making sure kids are put in safe families and reducing the wait times. This is something that I instructed the folks on the ground to ensure that HHS back here in Washington, D.C. knew all these categories of folks so that we can try to reduce it and close that facility.
Congressman, you talk about sponsors for these 2,800 children, for half of them. How many of these children, how many of the sponsors are parents? Where are the 2,800 children's parents?
So a good majority are parents. I don't have those exact numbers, Joe. But we'll also remember, these 2,800, that's just Tornillo. There's 14,000 kids in facilities throughout the United States of America, and that's a pretty large number. And because now you have all these permanent facilities that are more like homes, that you have too many kids in those. This is what created the pressure to need a temporary facility like the tent camp in Tornillo.
Congressman Will Hurd, thank you. We'll continue to follow along with you on this. And still ahead, a newfound majority. House Democrats have a lot of big plans for the next term, and it's up to the party leadership to decide how that plays out. We'll talk with Congresswoman Katherine Clark, who serves as vice chair of the Democratic Caucus. Morning Joe is back in a moment.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.